Hello! Today I'm going to do another video about astrocartography and specifically about the types of spaces that the planets set up, the kind of stage that is set up by each planetary influences. Because each planet can, or some of them more than others, can rule specific areas where the action will take place. Okay, so let's start with number one, the sun. Let's talk about sun lines. This could be sun ascendant lines, or sun MC, or also sun crossing points. Don't forget these crossing points that are shown on the card, on astrocartography, on the map. Very important, the crossing points. So anyhow, back to the sun. You will definitely be seen here in this area. I mean, the sun rules Leo. Leo is also the sign associated with the stage, with performance art, being on stage, being the center of attention. So in these areas, you will definitely be seen a lot. So of course that can attract people to you. You might move about in society more. You might be around where there's more people. Also, sun rules, of course, the day. This is a very day activity area, and you will have lots of energy. Of course, you're gonna have more here. You're gonna have more energy than in other areas. The good thing about the sun is, since it rules willpower, the things that you really want to implement, the goals in life, here you can do that. Whatever goal can be implemented could be done on a sun line. It's particularly a good place for performers, because here you might actually be on stage, like quite literally. That's the area the sun would rule, right? It's not a place where you will be backstage, so to speak. But depending on what area you work in or what you want to do, sun also has to do with authority. You might get into a position of authority. You have good relationships with authority, and you will be respected in this area. Unless there's other terrible things happening, of course. Of course, if you look at the transits, don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget to look at the whole picture, and not just astrocartography, okay? But other than that, the sun lines are very good for being seen and for implementing where you want to go. Here the spaces are, it's not very defined in that sense. It can be anywhere. Wherever you want to go, here you can. Here you can get out during the day or at night, whatever. You have lots of energy in these places. Number two, the moon. So here we have the opposites. The moon rules the night. Also the home. If you live on your moon line, you will spend more time at home. If you haven't lived on your moon line before, and then you come to your moon line, it's very lucky for finding a home, of course. It's very lucky for living situations. But you will also spend more time at home for whatever the reason may be. Your moon line goes through a very hot country. You will spend more time at home anyhow, because you're in a hot country, and it might be too hot to go outside, Or like currently I'm living on my moon line, and I live right next to the sea. I literally have sea view, because the moon also rules water, in particular the ocean, the tides of the ocean. So of course, or lake. Moon can also be lake energy. It's water. So you might live on your moon line, like I do, right next to the ocean. But other than that, it does keep you more at home, for some reason, whatever the circumstances may be. Okay. So, also the moon, of course, you might be awake late at night. The moon is more from night energy. If you're during the day, you might be near the water, you know, basically. So number 3, Mercury. On a Mercury line or a cross point, you will definitely have lots of opportunity for communication. The spaces ruled by Mercury are local. Mercury is the neighborhood, for example, coffee shops, public transit, meeting, talking to people at the bus stop or on the bus. Also, the city park is Mercury ruled. Or the forest, if you live in nature, if you live in a small town, the forest close enough within the city limits is also Mercury ruled. So Mercury is very much associated with also people taking a walk through the neighborhood, you know, the neighborhood stroll, people walking their dog is kind of Mercury like, you know, it's easy to get into conversations with dog owners also here. But like I say, Mercury is more local, unlike its counterpart Jupiter. Mercury, of course, could also, you might spend more time at a library, or you will have, at least with Mercury, the good thing, don't underestimate these Mercury lines, especially in astrocartography. Chances are, if you go to a place, you probably want to meet people, and especially want to meet locals. So with Mercury, if you have a strong Mercury line there or crossing point, you will meet locals. You might make friends with locals in this region. So that can be very important, very helpful, and very important, especially if you want to move to a place, you know. So don't underestimate Mercury. You know, also good for communication about rental agreements and stuff like that. Contracts can also be beneficial under Mercury energy. You will probably spend a lot of time downtown. You will spend time doing window shopping, or maybe there's a little theater festival. You know, Mercury is also a local theater, for example, or little festivals. That's very mercurial. Number 4, Venus. Venus can make you very lazy, similar to the moon, but there's more focus on beauty and or romance with Venus. Nice restaurants, the opera, boutiques, art galleries. I would say Venus is a bit more indoor than outdoor because it's very cozy. So on the Venus line, you know, if you're just visiting, let's say you're just visiting on the Venus line, first of all, you might notice people notice you, the other sex might notice you more, you might get more attention, but you also find very cozy places to go out for to eat, you know, a very nice cafe, a very good food. It's very good for food, of course, with Venus lines, you know. But I would say Venus is a bit more indoor related, or a very nice garden. You know, it's not. It's about beauty, of course. If you're looking for nature, and you know, that's where you go. And on your Venus line, it will be particularly beautiful, and there's a soothing energy. It will not be hectic. Venus is the opposite of hectic energy. It's good for people in arts. Also here, it can be very inspired. But like I say, it does make you lazy. Venus on its own, it has a lazy energy. So here you might not even feel like leaving the house, you know. So much about Venus. Like I say, art galleries. You might visit some art galleries. Things of that nature. Number 5, Mars. Mars lines have a bad rep because it will exhaust you. And by the way, it seems here with the Mars line, there seems to be a bit of a difference, or at least a distinct difference, between having a strong Mars in your birth chart versus the Mars line in astrocartography. A strong Mars in the birth chart is very good because, and Mars can be very integrated. If a person has a strong integrated Mars in their birth chart, they will actually appear less aggressive, by the way, yeah? Because their Mars energy is integrated and very well balanced. There's more of a balance here. But in astrocartography, when you get onto your Mars line, there's so much happening. You'll be rushed. You might feel rushed. You might not get enough sleep. That kind of energy. There's so much to do, you know. And you might actually take a trip someplace. You might be pulled someplace or whatnot. But that's the trip where you're constantly on the go. You know, you're doing sightseeing from morning to night, and it's very exhausting. Under Mars lines, it's very physically exhausting. Now, in terms of the spaces here, it can be anywhere, but since it is physically active, Mars energy does make you physically active. It's probably more outside, you know, and especially getting from one place to the next. On the Mars line, you will travel within the region that you are, and it can be quite stressful at times, you know. It might also be very hot. But Mars can be pretty much all over the place, but it is movement. Here there will be lots of physical movement to the point of exhaustion, you know, to the point where you're like, okay, I think I really need to take a nap now. So that's also the difference to the birth chart, Mars. Even a person with a strong Mars in the birth chart will be exhausted on the Mars line, yeah, generally speaking. Of course, you have to look at other things you have there. Mars also rules men, so you'll be more surrounded by males, and that can be good or bad. You know, we don't know. It's not really a judgment in that sense. Number 6, Jupiter. So Jupiter lines, everybody raves about Jupiter lines, and there's definitely some truth to it. Also, it depends what you want to do, of course. Jupiter, for travelers especially, is the ultimate outdoor energy. Jupiter rules wilderness, i.e. Nature beyond city limits. Here you might have a car, you might drive around with a car to get out into nature, into the wilderness. So it's also beneficial for traveling in the place. You know, maybe you want to move to a place, but you don't want to be stuck in that place forever. So with Jupiter, you will travel within the country, and especially, like I say, it will bring you into nature a lot, and especially more wilderness. You know, like it's really far away. There's no coffee shop nearby or whatever. There's no public restroom or stuff like that. That's more Jupiter, but also very beautiful, very expansive, you know. So it can produce very awe-inspiring feelings. Also idealistic. Jupiter has this idealism, and it can be very inspiring. Jupiter energy can be also very inspiring to travel to. And at this place, you will meet people of different cultures. If you stay for a while it doesn't even have to be that long, but if you're on your Jupiter line, I bet you anything you will meet others from abroad. You will meet other foreigners on this line. So Mercury, you will meet local folk. Jupiter, you'll meet the foreigner. Okay. Whether you're a foreigner, it doesn't matter. That's the people you will meet on these lines. That's what it's about. Also, Jupiter as a space is, of course, for religious and spiritual activity, very important. You know, you might suddenly go to a church or a temple or some meditation garden in this area. It's really nice. Another thing, of course, Jupiter also rules higher education, meaning anything beyond high school. And lots of people might, like I studied on my Jupiter line, or wherever I studied, wherever I got a degree. Actually, I got my degree on the first degree I got on my Saturn line, and I also had Jupiter Mercury crossing. Okay, so usually you have more than one energy, but Jupiter is very good for going to university, higher education, whatever it may be. You know, whatever school it is, you might automatically go there anyhow, you know. And of course it has the spiritual aspect, but the spirituality can also be very much outdoors here on Jupiter. You know, ocean, mountains, it doesn't matter, it's just far away. You will get really into nature here with Jupiter. You know, see animals, you know, wild animals that you normally don't get to see. Okay, number 7, Saturn. On a Saturn line, whether this is Saturn ascendant or IC, MC, it doesn't matter. On a Saturn line, you'll have to work very hard. In a nutshell, you know, most times you'll have to work very hard here. And even though Saturn can lead to strong feelings of loneliness and also homesickness, that's one reason Saturn is not the best line to move to, because chances are you will feel homesick, you will feel somehow alienated. But nevertheless, you will be seen here as well, particularly at work. Meaning, on Saturn lines, there is actually lots of social interaction on this infamous line. And let's not forget, Saturn also rules karmic relationships, right? On the Saturn line, you can meet your spouse. You know, you can also get divorced. So it's karmic relationships as well. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be alone or not connect on your Saturn line. That's wrong. That's not. It depends. It depends on how important Saturn is to you, how important it is for you in your chart. You can see that. You know. But under Saturn, it's not true that you'll be lonely in a literal sense. It's more like the scenario is more like you have to work so much that you might not. You'll feel also exhausted. Under Saturn, it's can be very exhausting. At some point, you might have no time for a social life, you know. But you will be seen. You're called to duty here. You will interact with people. Also, being on the Saturn line makes you very well aware of the differences in society and class, which can lead to feelings of alienation. And perhaps also the feeling of, you know, I do know these people, I do have these friends, and they're nice, but I don't feel like I'm part of their clan, like that, you know. Even though there might be some karmic connection, but at the end of the day, you don't feel like you're part of them. So Saturn can make you feel alienated, even being within a group, being within a marriage. There can be this, or it can be very depressing, to be honest. Okay, Saturn can be very depressing. And in terms of spaces, it's not really that lonely, and you will be exposed to society. Saturn is society related. You will meet people there. You know. Saturn line sucks for performers. You either don't get the part, or if you do get the part, you won't have time for rehearsals, maybe because you have another job to do that actually pays your bill. So that would be Saturn. or you do, if you are a performer, somehow you get torn apart, you know, by critiques. It can be very, it's not a good energy to be out there and seen with Saturn on the stage. It's more dutiful. It's a good line to be a teacher, you know, you could be a teacher, but it's not not fifth house entertainment. It's not the Leo fifth house sun entertainment with Saturn. That's not so good here. That's just not the best energy. Okay, so therefore Saturn can play out on many stages of life, but for the average person who doesn't want to be a superstar, it will be the place of work, and maybe even a visit to the courthouse. or when the courthouse, you know, when you get married, or you have to go to court, whatever the reason is, that's Saturn as well. You might have to call the police on a couple occasions, you know, stuff like that. You will also notice very much the architecture around you, and feel that very strongly, you know, for good or for better. It could be a very conducive energy for construction, if you're in the construction business. Maybe you even find yourself working on construction. That'd be very Saturnine, you know. Saturn energy can be inside constructions and also factory halls. Saturn is very much related to factory halls as well, whether you work in there or you go out to some, maybe you're going to a rave or something and it's a factory hall, you know, you go to some kind of show on the Saturn line, this might actually happen. Also church buildings could become relevant here, you know, institutional buildings in general. But in nature, if we're talking about nature, Saturn rules either the desert or Arctic, very cold regions, icy regions, or the mountains. So these things are typically connected to Saturn. Personally, I lived on my Saturn line and it went through a desert. Okay, so I was constantly surrounded by the Saturn line desert energy, you know, and I did get out a lot in nature. Other than that, so all of these regions are barren, and unlike its fruitful counterpart, the moon. So the moon would actually rule more the tropical forest, the rainforest. It's very moist. So that's Saturn. If Saturn lines fall into the mountains for you, or in a desert or a very cold region, you might actually spend time outside here as well. Another thing about Saturn, it can be very alienating from family. The person would like to spend more time at home, but cannot. So it's alienating from the family, but also in the sense that you would like to spend more time with the family, you would like to spend more time at home, but here you can't. Yeah, so it's not a homey, it's not a cozy homey energy with Saturn. It is very outside, you know, work related, other projects. It is society oriented, you know. So there's so much about Saturn. Now, number 9, Uranus. Uranus rules unusual things, cutting edge modern stuff, technology, larger gatherings, being part of a group, also factories can be Uranian. It's actually a very unstable energy. Should be avoided if you want to actually move somewhere and plan to stay. Avoid Uranus lines. It's just not very good. It's just not stable, you know. So it's very difficult to get grounded there. There's also a rebellious energy with Uranus. You might find yourself involved in a protest or something, you know, if you live on your Uranus line. It can also be very political. Uranus can be outdoors or indoors. It's not any particular space, except something like a scientific research institute, a working factory, or some avant-garde sci-fi kind of club. You know, that would be Uranian, or some whatever LBTG cool club. You know, that's really modern. Anything very modern is Uranian. So it's a very erratic energy, and it could make you feel scattered if you stay on your Uranus line. Things will not go according to plan. So wherever you plan on going, whatever space you plan to conquer on your Uranus line, there will be changes. You know, you plan on moving to a certain place, to a certain type of house, don't count on it. Or you plan on moving to this one small town, don't count on it. It might be the neighboring town. And then there's more and more. Uranus is not good for stable, not good to move to a place, you know. It's a great place to have fun for a weekend or for a little trip. That should be fine. And depending on what you want to do, of course. Now, number 10, Neptune. Very dreamy, romantic energy. Could be close to water, sea or lake, similar to the moon, similar like moon energy. Or you'll live in an old romantic looking building with strange neighbors, possibly. But anything like old romantic, you know, like an old apartment with very high ceilings and long curtains, and it's like some antique furniture, and it's a bit, maybe it looks a bit haunted, like a very kind of an eerie romantic feel. So that would be Neptune. That's at least the feeling, you know, that you get there. And you will see it manifested. I mean, that's the whole point. You will see these things manifested. You know, you live right at the sea, also on Neptune, or in an old building, or something strange, in a strange building, maybe. Neptune can also be very strange energy. It can be quite eccentric, but it's not noisy. Uranus is loud and noisy. Neptune is quiet. Neptune energy is very quiet, very reclusive. Neptune is actually great for a vacation, I would say, you know. But to move to another place, you might not feel grounded enough there. So Neptune can cause, if you live there, it can cause isolation and loneliness. Like for example, it can make you live outside of town. You know, maybe you have a job there, and now your apartment is somewhere outside of town, and you just don't want to drive back to town after work, or somehow you end up spending time more alone or be more isolated on the Neptune line, and it will be quiet. Okay. Neptune also rules film, music, sometimes gaudy interior, nostalgic interior, anything reminiscent of the past. Can be felt very strongly indoors or out in nature. So it can be strong both here. Nature can become very transcendent in this region with Neptune very strong. It's both here actually. You have a Neptune. Neptune has no boundaries. So how can it rule space? Neptune rules spacelessness. You know, so it doesn't rule a particular space. But especially here with astrocartography and Neptune, you do see it manifested when you go to these places. That's the interesting part. You can actually see Neptune in a very concrete manifestation. problem with Neptune is also low energy. You might sleep more here. Most likely here you have to sleep a bit more, take more naps. It can also be a very nighttime energy. You know, maybe also your job. It might be more in the evening or at night. It can be unusual times of the day. Neptune is very irregular energy. So it's both. It can be irregular. You know, one day you're up early in the morning, the next you have to stay up late or whatever. Another thing about Neptune is here you will notice more intensely poverty, or you'll see strange behavior. You will see some people behaving strangely. You know, Neptune does rule mental illness as well, so you might see some crazy people in this region, and it can also have a creepy energy. It could also be a bit of a perf energy, to be honest, yeah. But other than that, Neptune is generally very peaceful, but you might see some strange things on the Neptune line, you know. But it's not an aggressive energy. Of course, there's much more to say, but in terms of spaces on the Neptune line, like I say, water, and well, it will also there's a sense of idealism. You know, you feel more idealistic, so you'll probably perceive the area as very dreamy, very nice. You know, it will be for you. It will have this quality. But Neptune, like I say, Neptune can also rule decay and poverty. So you might arrive onto your Neptune line and you're supposed to go there, and you're like, oh my god, this place looks like a ghetto. You know, that could happen too with Neptune. So it's very broad. Neptune has no boundaries here. Okay. Now, number 11, Pluto. Now we have some tea. Pluto has a very unique effect in astrocartography. Too much of Pluto can be hard, but some Pluto midpoint energies can also be very helpful. If you stay long enough on a Pluto line, you will transform in these areas where Pluto and the other part are in your chart. When just visiting a place, Pluto can have the effect of noticing extreme counterparts. The extreme between ugliness and beauty, for example. Pluto's energy is black and white. Look where Pluto's line falls in your astrocartography. You may love one town near your Pluto line and totally hate the other town right next to it on the other side of the Pluto line. So that could happen. It's extreme. It's like it can be extreme aesthetic. You know, there's extreme ugliness. It's extreme this and extreme that. Some people are extremely friendly in this region. The others are extremely rude, and that's what you notice. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a very dangerous energy. Although I do want to warn you, there's there's area on the map in the zenith, meaning in the highest point. So Pluto in zenith, whatever you say it, would be the potentially most dangerous place for you. Don't go there. Where Pluto is at the highest point in astrocartography, I would not go there. Definitely not. Other than that, if it's a crossing point or even the Pluto line, I've been on my Pluto lines and nothing bad happens, you know. Although on one occasion I almost got into an accident, but not quite. Okay, so you might spend a lot of time in a car or a train in this region because Pluto is associated with machinery. And of course Pluto can also be associated with cemeteries. So that can be quite interesting. I have some Pluto crossing points going through Scotland, where I used to live, and I spent a lot of time on cemeteries. It's very interesting. If you go to Scotland, you should do that, by the way, regardless of what line you have, okay? Pluto energy is neither outdoor nor indoor. Same here. It's neither city or countryside or wilderness. Although Pluto is one of the worst energies to be on stage, or to be seen in public. You know, this is actually not good to be seen in public here. Other than that, it does not rule a certain space in that sense. It can be anywhere. You know? It has a, if you go out into the wilderness, into nature on the Pluto line, that can be very transformative, very inspiring. Also, Pluto rules catharsis. You know, so there can be a regenerative element to it. So nature can be very regenerative on your Pluto line. Now, so yeah, Pluto would be the worst energy to be a performer in this region. You don't want to do that, or deal with the public too much. You know, it's hidden. It's a hidden energy. You're more likely to work as a stagehand behind the scenes. You know, or maybe on an oil rig or something that might be that might match the energy. You will be in the dark. You will be more unseen in this region. You will not feel seen very much, and you might see some dark-looking creatures. You know, people with very dark auras in this region. That could happen depending where it is for you. So much about Pluto. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is also very important. That's the nodal axis. Because you can also see on the astrocartography, on Astrodienst, you also get sometimes the north node, midpoint. It can be with all sorts of planets. You can have this nodal axis, midpoint parts, or even lines. I think there is a line. There's a north node line. Now, this is very interesting. It's not as dramatic as some may want to believe, due to its uniqueness and strong importance in the birth chart, right? Especially lately, we talk a lot about the north node and the nodal axis and how much it relates to Dharma and how important it is. And it is a bit different from other planets in the chart. Nevertheless, the nodal axis lines may or may not be very important when it comes to fulfilling your Dharma through the north node, but because so is Saturn and potentially all other planetary energies, depending on the sign and house that your north node falls into. What I'm saying with this is you don't have to go to your nodal axis line before you fulfill your Dharma, obviously. It can happen anywhere, you know. Fulfilling your north node contracts can happen anywhere. Saturn line, moon line, and especially on those planets that are involved in your north node, you know. If you have a north node in the 8th house, maybe you should visit a Pluto line just to see what it feels like, you know, because you're supposed to explore these 8th house Plutonic energies. So you should look where does your north node fall into, and some of these planetary energies, some of these planets connected to the house and sign that it falls into might actually be very beneficial. Or better, your karma will lead you there anyhow. You know, it might happen automatically anyhow. So much about that. Now, to understand the meaning of the nodal axis in astrocartography, we need to look no further than the interpretation given on Astrodienst. This interpretation reflects the old view, the old Western astrologers' view on the nodal axis, namely its connection to the 11th house and groups of friends. Because when you live or stay for a while in a place where your north node is activated, where you have these midpoints or lines, usually through a crossing point, you will go through, you will have lots of pre-arranged meetings. Sometimes that's all it can mean, by the way, yeah? Depending on how long you stay there. Meaning you will go to places and it is a group gathering and it's something pre-arranged. Often there is some kind of association behind it. So it also, the old Western astrologer also associated the nodal axis, the north node, with clubs and associations. Now here in astrocartography, you can clearly see this connection, which is quite interesting, because we tend to forget the beginnings. You know, what did Western astrologers used to say about this nodal axis, because they did have an opinion. It was just not very broad, okay? But here you actually see that. Now, if you visit a north node place, maybe for the first time, and I've seen that many times now, you might stay at a friend of a friend's house. You will be set up to stay with a person that you don't even know the person yet, okay? But there's another friend in between. Does that make sense? If you are a person who gives talks or teaches workshops in different states or countries, you might get an actual invitation to come to this place and do whatever it is that you do. Lodging in these places is often pre-planned and pre-arranged for you. So that's really the meaning in astrocartography for this nodal axis, for this north node. And of course you have to look at the combination with the planet, you know. So also north node places, it can be the place where you go to university, because now you also have, other than your lectures, you might have other groups that are planned, you know, it's planned for you, and you have to go there, you want to go there. But it's very interesting to see that, and I've talked to other people about that. If you go to the place the first time, and you do have a strong nodal axis, usually you're invited, your lodging is taken care of, you know, it can be anywhere where you have this, and some people have in many places, and it really does apply. So that's quite interesting about this nodal axis. But like I say, it's not, it might be, you know, if you live on your nodal axis, a time might come where exactly this north node theme will be questioned, or you're at a cross point where you really have to make these north node, south node decisions. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, it might very well happen. But to think that the north node place is not the only place where you fulfill these energies, these dharma, soul contracts, that's wrong, of course. Yeah? This would be way too, this is not true, this is not true. It will happen on Saturn as much as on Jupiter, you know. So, so I hope this helped to explain a bit more about astrocartography. Just one last point that I want to make, as a bit outside of this discussion now about space, or at least local space, is sometimes you can go to a place or live in an area where you have especially these midpoints between planets that you don't normally have in your birth chart. And that can also be quite interesting, because you will really bring out a different side in you. Although when you leave the place again, you might look back and you're like, oh my God, when I lived in this area, I was not myself, you know. Maybe you live in a place where you have some Uranus, Mars Uranus, or something crazy, you know, and you don't have that in your natal chart. Here, this aspect will come out. So it's also interesting to for people who want to experiment and who are like soul searching, you want to get to know yourself better, try out a region, spend some time in a region that activates planetary, especially its crossing points, that you don't have in your natal chart, and see what happens. Something that in your birth chart, these planets are not connected, but here in this area, in this region, they are. So that can be, I would say that that's a more advanced level, or it's more experimental, that's more experimental approach to astrocartography, and can be quite interesting. Let me know what you think, and I hope this talk helped. Take care. Bye bye.